Winter 2016 was a very good season, in fact one of the best seasons in a very long time, and as much as I'd love to continue talking about Rakugo and the likes for another 13 weeks, we have a batch of new anime to sift through. It's got some interesting titles, and given the number of surprise hits last season, who knows what to expect. As usual with my first thoughts videos, I'll be watching the first episode of a number of new anime and giving my thoughts. And as always, please do continue the discussion in the comments. Anyway, let's get started with the first show. Boku no Hero Academia is up first and possibly one of the most discussed so far, coming from a very popular manga series. Let's have a watch of the episode. So what's hit me immediately is the bold art choices. I quite like the exaggerated character designs and emotions when they're used well. And it's another superhero anime, okay? As much as I don't want to make this comparison so early in the episode, it's almost unavoidable. This looks like One Punch Man. And that's not a bad thing by any means, which I will be discussing a little bit more with another show coming up. And it's not just the basic concept of the series, some visual choices are strikingly similar to One Punch Man. And not in a great way. It has that kind of over-animated style that's become quite popular recently, but on a comedic level or even an entertainment level, it's pretty bland. A number of scenes have had their comedy diffused by poor pacing or misplaced delivery, like the doctor scene. It seems like they're trying to move the story on too quickly for the comedy to work. I have to say though, as the episode's going on, it's gained a touch of emotion that was lacking earlier. I'm starting to actually empathise with our main character. And this is a nice touch for what's been up until now an episode lacking in finesse. And again, as a person not completely versed in the intricacies of animation specifics, this collection of shots could so easily be straight out of a number of other series. So that's the first episode over, and I had a nice time. There were a few moments of well implemented comedy, balanced out with moments of touching, subtle character drama. What brought the episode down was the reoccurring poor handling of certain comedic scenes that seemed all too eager to get out of the way for the final third of the episode. Visually, the episode gave me a real mixed bag. For what initially seemed like an aesthetically experimental piece, slowly revealed that it might not be as unique as it suggests. Although I can't say the visuals didn't work, for the most part the over-exaggerated movements and expressions only aided the comedy. It's a series that's really going to have to work to separate itself from other similar shows, but if it does, it has the charm and character to pull something off that could be quite nice. Overall, it was okay. Next is Kumiko, that looks like the coolest series of the season, but at the same time the most confusing. I've literally no idea what this series is about, so let's just watch the first episode. And well, instantly, look at those backgrounds. There's a kind of lovely, soft watercolour look about them. And overall really nice feel to the start of the episode. It's very tranquil. Already I'm getting really strong slice of life vibes from this, which is a massive plus for me, and it seems to have a really good handle on the genre. It's introduced its humour, and I'm quite surprised. The show seems to have a very bizarre sense of humour. Lots of kind of meta jokes and the use of obscurity. Not a style that's easy to pull off. Usually it can get too bizarre and become incoherent, but Kumiko seems to have complete control over its own obscurity. Although a bit mad, the root of most jokes are simple, so it never gets too out of hand. One thing I would note is the heavy use of references native to Japan. I've watched a lot of comedy anime, but even some of these are flying over my head. And that's kind of it. The pacing was very slow and it was hard to comment on most parts of the episode, but as an introduction that was great. Yes, it didn't cover much and lacked any real structure, but I feel that's part of the show. It seems very focused on pushing the boundaries of normality with its humour. It's totally not afraid to go off rails and fly comedically in the other direction. And I really love that sense of sporadic lack of structure. The bizarre comedy and well delivered slice of life atmosphere could create a show that's a relaxing watch, dipped in a humour with real comedic depth. Joker Game is the next one we'll be checking out, a snazzy looking World War II drama. It's not often we get this kind of setup, so I'm looking forward to it. So immediately we're met with Japanese spoken English, and I've never really understood why they don't just use English voice actors for these. Maybe there aren't any in Japan. But I love how they're portraying the setting. There's a real sense of location. Same can be said about the cinematography, lots of interesting compositions and shot that give the episode a lot of personality. I mean, just look at this shot of the sea, that's absolutely fantastic. And the visuals are done with a kind of realistic style. Lots of textures and lighting add to the atmosphere. I'm quite a bit through the episode now, and there's a lot of explanatory dialogue. Not necessarily info dumping, but it seems like they're repeating each point over and over again. The final segment of the episode has been really interesting though. There's a great use of tension and the dialogue has been played down a little. The episode's biggest problem was by far the dialogue during the middle. It was long, repetitive, and for the most part unnecessary. A lot of what was being said could easily be picked up visually or just by using common sense. And this was a problem for most of the episode. Thankfully the final few minutes rectified this and gives me a little bit more hope for the future. They've created something unique here, and with the right choices it could make an interesting story. Kabanari is another big popular one, due to it being made mainly by the staff of Attack on Titan and having many narrative and stylistic similarities. And before we start off the episode, I'd like to just mention that two works being similar to each other isn't really basis for critique. There might be problems that arise because of similarities, like mentioned in Boku no Hero Academia, but to use it as a critique on its own is pretty weak. If you look hard enough, every story will have its similarities with an older work. That's just unavoidable. So with that out of the way, let's just watch the episode. We open up with a sort of action scene that's there to establish the feel and situation of the story, and to be honest, the first few minutes are kind of cool looking but pretty poor. Lots of exaggerated, forced violence, seeming a bit rushed so far. A lot of this episode has been on a train, it's like Final Fantasy VII all over again. I have to mention though, the amount of detail in the designs and animation is really impressive. Compared to the usual basic faces we get, it's nice eye candy. And the great visuals are matched with brilliant sound design. I like how they're not using music for some of the scenes, focusing emphasis onto specific elements of the show. So I'm quite a bit through the episode now, and although it's been flashy and immersive, it's dragging a little bit. They've yet to establish a main narrative, or even any characters for that matter. What's been introduced thematically so far is pretty weak, and the impressive action that has been used has lacked impact or meaning. The final third of the episode seems to be using that shit hits the fan narrative technique. Some basic plot points are established here, but it's mainly showing off the visuals and creating intrigue for the next episode. Overall, this episode was gorgeously put together. There's been an obvious large amount of skill and precision put into elements such as animation and sound, and it paid off. Although sometimes it did feel meaningless, for many scenes it did manage to create a strong atmosphere and a sense of tension despite the narrative being fairly unimaginative. It definitely seems like a series that's going to play off its visual storytelling, and I think this might be the right decision. Best parts of the episode had no dialogue, and the worst parts were where the characters stopped to talk. What it needs to do now is work on being a bit more subtle with its exposition. And build stronger links with its characters. There were elements of a really exciting series there, and for those who still insist on the comparison, a lot stronger than Attack on Titan's first episode. Kenai is up next, the new show from Studio Trigger, a studio known for creating very unfunny internet meme shows and then an over-glorified internet meme show. Anyway, let's have a watch and see how they handle this one. So we start off with a really funky intro, nice use of colours and extravagant imagery. It's nice to see Trigger use their use of surreal and exaggerated visuals without going too far. Staying grounded enough is pretty important for viewers, or they'll just lose interest and connection with the story. It's pretty distracting when a piece of animation is animated with such extravagance that it skews quality and ultimately ruins a scene. So there's an obvious big focus on visual humour in Kenai. The first 10 minutes or so have been jam-packed with it. Not really my thing, but I'm sure someone's liking it. There is a lot of talking in this show, and it's yet to establish any real reason for me to care about what's being said. Seems like a bunch of normal anime tropes glamoured up with fancy visuals. The MC, for instance, is the usual emotionless character that can work in some places for comedy, but not really something for me to get behind. And that seems to be the intent, as we're getting backstory about a character that seems as interested as I am. The whole using character tropes on purpose can pay off in the future, so I'll give that the benefit of the doubt. So visuals, other than the poor use of lens flares, please don't use lens flares in an art style like this. Like I said, exaggerated while staying grounded with fun use of dynamic colours and constantly interesting compositions. Narrative wise, there's just way too much talking and too little going on. I mean, it takes a whole episode for them to essentially introduce a simple premise, a premise that wasn't even that complicated and didn't merit a 20-minute build-up. Most of my complaints are down to me being completely uninterested in the show's style. I'm not a fan of that cartoonish visual comedy, and I don't really like the setting. I wasn't attached to the characters enough either, which caused the story to be lost on me. I mean, these are all very personal things and not really critique at all, and I'm sure it will suit the tastes of others. And finally, Flying Witch. I really don't know much about this one, but it seems like it's a show that you don't really know much about anyway. Slice of life shows are so intricate in whether they work or not. It's almost impossible to have any sort of judgment until you've watched it. So let us watch. We start the episode off with a bunch of really gorgeous landscape shots. Instantly you get a calm, slow-paced atmosphere. I love the smooth, slow animations they're using for the characters. Almost as if the world is moving in slow motion. It's very tranquil. So far, although there's not been a huge amount to talk about, Flying Witch has been a really well executed slice of life. It's established its location successfully, introduced its characters nicely, and created a unique feel. The episode has employed a fantastic use of music as well. It kind of plays with the flow of the episode, and it fits perfectly. Almost everything Flying Witch does is to slow down time. Shots are drawn out and left to run a second or two more than they normally would, comedy is smartly dribbled onto the screen, it's all just very calm. Now this could quite easily not work, but there's a clear methodology behind the tranquility and it works perfectly. I never felt disconnected during the episode and I was fine with the slow pace. This has surprisingly become one of my favourites of the season so far. So as much as I'd love to watch more shows, this is all I've got time for just now. And this isn't even half of what I wanted to try out. So I want everybody to post a comment with 5 shows they've enjoyed so far. I hope to see you guys in the comments. Remember to leave a like and share the video around if you enjoyed, and you can subscribe if you want to watch more videos like this. Cheers.